Welcome, everyone. Thank you very much for coming together to immerse ourselves in this rich body of wisdom we call Torah. We're going to read through our weekly Torah portion in English translation. I'll share with you some reactions I had to the Torah portion, and then we will open it up for our collective collaborative conversation about it. If you'd like to join me in saying a blessing, giving thanks for this moment, feel free to do so. Baruch
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 atah
atah Adonai
Adonai
Eloheinu
Eloheinu
melech
melech
haolam
haolam
asher
asher
קידשנו
קידשנו
אותם
במצוותיו
וציוונו
וציוונו
לעשות
לעשות
בדברי
בדברי
תורה.
תורה. Amen.
Thank you, God, for the opportunity to immerse ourselves in words, deeds, and relationships of Torah. I'll share with you the opening verses, then I'll invite others to have an opportunity to read as well. We're in Parshat Yitro, a book of Exodus, chapter 18, beginning with verse 1. Jethro, priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, God's people, how God had brought Israel out of Egypt. So Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after she had been sent home, and her two sons, of whom one was named Gershom, that is to say, had been a stranger in a foreign land, and the other was named Eleazar, meaning the God of my father was my help, and he delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought Moses' son and wife to him in the wilderness, where he was encamped at the mountain of God. He sent word to Moses, I, your father-in-law Jethro, am coming to you with your wife and her two sons. Moses went out to meet his father-in-law. He bowed low, kissed him. Each asked after the other's welfare, and they went into the tent. Which would you like to read at verse 8?
Verse 8. Moses then recounted to his father-in-law everything that the Lord had done to Pharaoh and to the Egyptians for Israel's sake, all the hardships that had befallen them on the way, and how the Lord had delivered them. And Jethro rejoiced over all the kindness that the Lord had shown Israel when he delivered them from the Egyptians. Blessed be the Lord, Jethro said, who delivered you from the Egyptians and from Pharaoh, and who delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods. Yes, by the result of their very scheme against the people. And Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, brought a burnt offering and sacrifice for God. And Aaron came with all the elders of Israel to partake of the meal before God with Moses' father.
Well, thank you, Richard. Mark Thompson, want to read starting with verse 13?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. Next day, Moses sat as magistrate among the people, while the people stood about Moses from morning until evening. But when Moses' father-in-law saw how much he had to do for the people, he said, What is this thing that you are doing to the people? Why do you act alone while all the people stand about you from morning until evening? Moses replied to his father-in-law, It is because the people come to me to inquire of God. When they have a dispute, it comes before me, and I decide between one person and another, and I make known the laws and teachings of God. But Moses' father-in-law said to him, The thing you are doing is not right. You will surely wear yourself out and these people as well, for the task is too heavy for you. You cannot do it alone. Now listen to me. I will give you counsel, and God be with you. You represent the people before God. You bring the disputes before God, and enjoin upon them the laws and the teachings, and make known to them the way they are to go and the practices they are to follow. You shall also seek out from among all the people capable men who fear God, trustworthy men who spurn ill-gotten gain. Set these over them as chiefs of thousands, hundreds, 50s and 10s, and let them judge the people at all times. Have them bring every major dispute to you, but let them decide every minor dispute themselves. Make it easier for yourself by letting them share the burden with you. If you do this, and God commands so commands you, you will be able to bear up, and all these people too will go home unwearied. Moses heeded his father-in-law and did just as he had said. Moses chose capable men out of all Israel and appointed them heads over the people, chiefs of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. And they judged the people at all times. The difficult matters they would bring to Moses, and all the minor matters they would decide themselves. Then Moses bade his father-in-law farewell, and he went his way to his own land.
Thank you. Tom and Jackie, would you like to read a little bit, the very start of chapter 19?
Yes, thank you, Rabbi. On the third new moon, after the Israelites had gone forth from the land of Egypt, on that very day, they entered the wilderness of Sinai. Having journeyed from Rephidim, they entered the wilderness of Sinai and encamped in the wilderness. Israel encamped there in front of the mountain, and Moses went up to God. God called to him from the mountain, saying, "Thus shall you say to the house of Jacob, and declare to the children of Israel, you have seen what I did to the Egyptians, how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to me. Now then, if you will obey me faithfully and keep my covenant, you shall be my treasured possession among all the peoples. Indeed, all the earth is mine, but you shall be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. These are the words that you shall speak to the children of Israel." Moses came and summoned the elders of the people and put before them all that Adonai had commanded him. All the people answered as one, saying, "All that Adonai has spoken, we will do." And Moses brought back the people's words to Adonai, and Adonai said to Moses, "I will come to you in a thick cloud, in order that the people may hear when I speak with you, and so trust you ever after." Then Moses reported the people's words to Adonai, and Adonai said to Moses, "Go to the people and warn them to stay pure today and tomorrow. Let them wash their clothes. Let them be ready for the third day. For on the third day, Adonai will come down in the sight of all the people on Mount Sinai. You shall set bounds for the people round about, saying, 'Beware of going up the mountain or touching the border of it. Whoever touches the mountain shall be put to death without being touched, by being either stoned or shot. Beast or person, a trespasser shall not live. When the ram's horn sounds a long blast, they may go up on the mountain.'"
Nice, thank you. Tom, do you want to read a little bit?
I'm going to pass, Rabbi.
His voices.
Okay, gotcha. Robert, would you like to continue there? We're at verse 14.
Yes, thank you. And Moses went down from the mount unto the people, and sanctified the people, and they washed their clothes. And he said unto the people, "Be ready against the third day, come not at your wives." And it came to pass on the third day in the morning, that there were thunders and lightnings and a thick cloud upon the mount, and the voice of the trumpet exceeding loud, so that all the people that was in the camp trembled. And Moses brought forth the people out of the camp to meet with God, and they stood at the nether part of the mount. And Mount Sinai was altogether on a smoke, because the Lord descended upon it in fire, and the smoke thereof ascended as the smoke of a furnace, and the whole mount quaked greatly. And when the voice of the trumpet sounded long, and waxed louder and louder, Moses spake, and God answered him by a voice. And the Lord came down upon Mount Sinai on the top of the mount, and the Lord called Moses up to the top of the mount, and Moses went up. And the Lord said unto Moses, "Go down, charge the people, lest they break through unto the Lord to gaze, and many of them perish. And let the priests also, which come near to the Lord, sanctify themselves, lest the Lord break forth upon them. And Moses said unto the Lord, the people cannot come up to Mount Sinai, for thou chargest us, saying, set bounds about the mount, and sanctify it. And the Lord said unto him, away, get thee down, and thou shalt come up, thou and Aaron with thee. But let not the priests and the people break through to come up unto the Lord, lest he break forth upon them. So Moses went down unto the people, and spake unto them.
Thank you so much. Dave, would you like to read at the very start of chapter 20?
God spoke all these words, saying, I, the Eternal, am your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt, the house of bondage. You shall have no other gods besides me. You shall not make for yourself a sculptured image, nor any likeness of what is in the heavens above, or on the earth below, or in the waters under the earth. You shall not bow down to them or serve them, for I, the Eternal, am your God, an impassioned God, visiting the guilt of the parents upon the children, upon the third and fourth generation of those who reject me, but showing kindness to the thousandth generation of those who love me and keep my commandments. You shall not swear falsely in the name of the Eternal your God, for God will not clear one who swears falsely by that name.
Well, Dave, thank you so much. I'm going to invite Dave and Susan, if you'd like to take over there at verse 8.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Remember the Sabbath day to make it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work, and the seventh day is a Sabbath to Hashem your God. You shall not do any work. You and your son and your daughter, your servant and your maid, and your animal, and your alien who is in your gates. Because for 6 days Hashem made the skies and the earth, the sea, and everything that is in them. And he rested on the seventh day. On account of this, Hashem blessed the seventh day and made it holy. Honor your father and your mother, so that your days will be extended on the land that Hashem your God is giving you.
Where are we?
You shall not murder. You shall not commit adultery. You shall not steal. You shall not testify against your neighbor as a lying witness. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife or his servants or his maid or his ox or his ass or anything that your neighbor has. And all the people are seeing the thunders and the flashes and the sound of the horn and the mountains smoking. And the people saw, and they moved and stood at a distance. And they said to Moses, you speak with us so we may listen, but let God not speak with us, for we may die.
Can I take it?
And Moses said to the people, do you want to read?
Yeah.
Okay, go.
And Moses said to the people, do not fear, for in order to test you, God has come, and in order that his fear be upon you, so that you do not offend. And the people stood at a distance, and Moses drew near the thick cloud where God was. And the Lord said to Moses, thus shall you say to the Israelites, you yourselves saw that from the heavens I spoke with you. You shall not make with me gods of silver and gods of gold. You shall not make them for yourselves. All earthen altars shall you make for me, An earthen altar shall you make for me, and yet you shall sacrifice upon it your burnt offerings and your communion sacrifices, your sheep and your cattle. In every place that I make my name invoked, I shall come to you and bless you. And should you make me an altar of stones, you shall not build them of hewn stones. For your sword would brandish over it and profane it. And you shall not go up by steps upon my altar, that you may not expose your nakedness upon it.
Thank you. And that's our entire portion for this week. And it was certainly drama. It was a climactic point in all of Torah. And I know that in the course of our readings, Justin and Mark have been sharing some thoughts, and I encourage them to share them in the course of our discussion if they'd like as well. And part of our tradition says that we were present there at Mount Sinai. And I want to kind of modify that a little bit and say, not only will we there at Mount Sinai, we are there at Mount Sinai. This moment is an ever ongoing moment in many ways. So the first way I wanted to start off with how I responded this year to this week's Torah portion, what I was experiencing. I wrote down this word confounding. There's something very confounding is the way I experienced this Torah portion this year. And in some ways, it starts off with how it actually begins. It begins, first of all, with the name of this Torah portion, Yitro. And the text emphasizes that Yitro is a priest of Midian. And so this climactic moment of revelation and the giving forth of what we'll discuss, these instructions of Mount Sinai, that it would be named for a Midianite priest, that's somehow confounding to me. And then the text itself acknowledges the confounding presence of Yitro, that he introduces something that is kind of destabilizing of the order of things. First of all, he brings Moses' wife, Zipporah, and the two sons. Well, I guess Moses left them behind for some reason. But Yitro decides it's not appropriate. They need to be in this camp. And so he disrupts some kind of an order that Moses had settled upon by bringing Zipporah and the two children in. And then Yitro further disrupts and confounds the order of things that Moses had established by watching Moses hear complaints and disputes and trying to solve everyone's problems. And Yitro says, this isn't working, and it's going to work out badly, not only for you, but it's going to work out badly for everybody. So what you need to do is assign and delegate. And so he's now starting to undo the order that Moses had created. So this is what's fascinating. Then when we look at it more deeply, as I looked at it more deeply, the language itself is confounding and disruptive of one's logical sensibilities. That's the way I experience it. And so we look at this verse in chapter 20, from chapter 20, verse 15, which I have on the study sheet. All the people saw, and my English translation says, the thunder and lightning, the blare of the shofar, and the mountain smoking. The people saw, and they, my translation says, fell back and stood at a distance. So first, a little bit about the Hebrew there. The word that in my translation is rendered as thunder, the word there is kolot. And kolot actually means voices. And so someone has decided to translate those voices in the context of what comes next, which is the word for lightning, and decided to translate the sounds as, oh, that must mean thunder. Really, the literal translation is voices and or sounds. In any case, the Hebrew tells us that the people saw sounds as well as lightning. They saw the sounds of the shofar and the mountain smoking. So there is a kind of fascinating convolution or confounding of senses that's going on. The fact that people can see what should merely be auditory. And then the concluding part of verse 15, that people saw, and then we have this Hebrew verb, nuah, which in my translation says fell back. But really, the nuance of that Hebrew verb is they vibrated. They shook, they vibrated. So the question is, when we're encountering that, how do we respond to it? What is that shaking or that vibration all about? Is it about fear? Is it about anxiety? Or is it vibration in the sense of they're being attuned, like an instrument being tuned up to a vibrational level that can somehow be synchronous with the vibration that's coming forth from beyond. So as we read through this material, I want to encourage all of us to, instead of to just kind of abstractly try and interpret what's happening here, to see what we're choosing as our response, what our inclination is to respond. And then to think about, why am I responding that way to this work of art? So with that, I want to share with you a midrash that comes from a book called Mechilta. That's about two different rabbis responded to this very verse about what was happening there at Mount Sinai. Rabbi Ishmael says, they saw what is seen and heard what is heard. Rabbi Akiva says, no, actually, they saw what is heard and heard what is seen. So what is going on here with Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva? Why does Rabbi Ishmael say, look, they saw what you can see and they heard what you can hear? And Rabbi Akiva says, actually, no, they saw what you can normally hear, and they heard what you can normally see. So is it just a matter of exploring the different takes on what these words mean? I think it's bigger than that. I think it has to do with a more generalized, different approach to experiencing virtually every aspect of life. That's a difference between these two. So just a quick notion about these two individuals. Rabbi Ishmael was a Kohen. He was a Kohen Gadol. He was a priest. He came from a very illustrious family. He came from a very wealthy family. He came from the elite society within the Israelite world. Rabbi Akiva was an illiterate shepherd until he was about the age of 40, when he commits himself to learning Hebrew, and he commits himself to studying Torah, and eventually becomes a great rabbi. In a sense, they are each is experiencing a different miracle that's happening here at Mount Sinai. So for Rabbi Ishmael, he is the priest. Remember, he is an inheritor of 1,000 years of protocol, of ritual, that his lineage has been responsible for that period of time. And what were they in charge of? They were in charge of the service in the temple, which was designed to bring the divine down to earth. And it was a dangerous job. It was so dangerous that the high priest would have to be on Yom Kippur, when the high priest would go into the Holy of Holies to encounter the most concentrated presence of God, the high priest would have to have a rope tied around his waist, so that in case he was struck by the presence of that power, he could be and driven unconscious. He could be hauled out. So this is the inheritance that Rabbi Ishmael. So for him, in a sense, the miracle of Sinai is that the infinite descended into the finite, and that nobody died, and that people survived that encounter. For him, that's what the miracle is. The finite coming down into infinite, coming down into the finite, and the people surviving. Rabbi Akiva has a different experience. Rabbi Akiva is what we call a man of return, someone who didn't grow up didn't grow up even speaking Hebrew, didn't grow up with that kind of wealth and status that Rabbi Ishmael did. And his spiritual labors were about climbing higher than the world he was born into as a shepherd. He became a great Torah scholar. So for him, the greater miracle has to do with the ascent of the human up to the divine. And that has to do with, and that requires a transcending of physical limitations. So the question is, which perception of the miracle is right or wrong? Of course, the answer is yeah. And for us, I think it's interesting to be attentive to which one of these perhaps are we more inclined towards, which one of these do we have to work on more, because they're both important. Rabbi Ishmael's insistence on the protocols and the practices and attending to the specific words of instructions that were being given so that we can have an organized society, that's important. Rabbi Akiva's notion about don't be limited by the finite, seek to connect with that which is infinite in a very personal way. That's important too. And some of us are more naturally drawn or just predisposed to one and the other, but they're both important. So turning to our study sheet, after this moment of what we just read in verse 15, Moses says to the people, don't be afraid, for God has come only in order to, not only to test you. So again, we have this interesting Hebrew word, test, which is a word that was also familiar to us from what happened with Abraham at the binding of Isaac, that God tests Abraham and this binding of Isaac. So the question is, how do we react to that notion of the word test? What does it mean? Does it mean God wasn't sure about Abraham or the rest of the Israelites and is testing us? Or, well, I now have a personal trainer. And when I go to the gym, the personal trainer says, okay, try lifting this weight, which is now a little bit heavier. Now, is he doing that because he doesn't think I can do it? Or is he doing it because he knows I can do it and he wants to challenge me to rise up to this level that he knows I'm capable of rising up to, even if I doubted myself? So it's just interesting to think, how do we relate to this word test as it appears here? Does it sound like an exam? Does it sound like a lack of confidence in us? Or quite the opposite, does it represent a supreme level of confidence in who we are, and more perhaps than we have in ourselves? Well, Rashi, our medieval commentator, goes on with his understanding of this word nasot and says, nasot is an expression of elevation and greatness. God has come in order to exalt. So what Rashi is doing there, he's playing on this word nasa, which means test, and he's looking at another Hebrew word that's kind of similar, that's nun samach samach instead of nun samach hey, and the word nun samach samach, which means to raise up, and that's where we get the word nace, which means, we'll see soon in the Book of Numbers,
Miracle.
flag, or it means miracle. So Rashi's saying the testing has to do with an uplift, in a sense, to make us miracles ourselves. So our a more recent rabbinic commentator produced a work called Hamek Davar, which was produced by Rabbi Naftali Zvi Yehuda Berlin, who was a 19th century rabbi, a leader in the Lithuanian yeshiva world. He looks at all this material. So this is someone who he's not a Kabbalist, he's dedicated to this world of study. He writes, it is human spiritual greatness that is God's purpose, revealing God's self. The ability to endure hardship through the immense amplification of inner resources. Mekhavar is making clear that what this is all about is the divine awareness that we have the capacity to be greater than we imagine that we can be. And so is going through this process to help us reach and become the amplification of what we possess and what we can be. So I want to share with you another early 20th century rabbi, and this is Rav Kook, who was a Kabbalist and was the chief rabbi in the land of Israel before it became a state. And he's now going to be exploring what is all this about seeing sounds and feeling vibrations. And he says, at their source, sound and sight are united. Only in our limited physical world, in this disjointed world, are these phenomena disconnected and detached. If we are bound to the present, we can only perceive the universe through the viewpoint of the temporal and the material. Then we will always be aware of the divide between sight and sound. The vision at Mount Sinai, however, granted the people a unique perspective, as if they were standing near the source of creation. From that vantage point, they were able to witness the underlying unity of the universe. They were able to see sounds and hear sights. God's revelation at Sinai was registered by all their senses simultaneously as a single, undivided perception. So for that, I'd like to turn to our painting for the day. And this is by Vasily Kandinsky. And Kandinsky was experienced what we call now synesthesia, an instrumentality of one of our pathways of responding to a stimuli around us. And it opens up a pathway to a entirely different sensory system. So he himself was known for seeing colors upon hearing music. And here is his painting here is one that he did in 1913, composition number 7. And it's a wash in color and movement. And at the center of it is a kind of cosmic convulsion, which for Kandinsky yet reveals a kind of cosmic harmony. And in his sense of synesthesia, he experienced it as a very young child when he said he bought a set of box full of oil paints, and he said, I could hear the colors hissing at one another. And this notion that he has in this painting, which involves for him a lot of biblical themes, including creation itself, the flood, and so forth. He talks about it this way. He says, he wrote, technically, every work of art comes into being in the same way as the cosmos, by means of catastrophes, which ultimately create out of the cacophony of the various instruments that symphony we call the music of the spheres. Here we have Kandinsky's synesthetic condition, and its reflection on this canvas is a form of confusion that leads to an expanded perception of the phenomena we encounter every day. So I want to suggest what's happening in our Torah portion is this notion that there is this upending of our logical senses in order to have a greater perception of what's really going on in the universe. And what is the notion of what we're to be attentive to? So one way of looking at what's happening here perhaps would be through the eyes of Rabbi Ishmael is, well, look at the instructions that we've got. Don't murder, don't rob, don't commit adultery, don't bear false witness, observe the Shabbat. Very clear, logically understood directions about how we're to live. What's interesting to note is in the Hebrew text that we just read, the word commandment is never present. There's no presentation of these being 10 mitzvot, 10 commandments. In fact, what we read was God spoke, daber, all these words, devarim. And in a few more chapters, we're going to read Moses wrote down on the tablets the terms of the covenant with 10 advarim, the 10, you can either say words, or Jewish tradition tends to use that as saying the 10 spokennesses, the 10 utterances. And we'll encounter that in later rabbinic writing in the Mishnah, where we read this. With 10 utterances was the world created. What are these 10 utterances? Well, they go back to the 10 times in the story of creation where God says, and God said, let there be light. And God said, let there be land. And God said, let there be vegetation. So the word speaking, daber, is said 10 times. And the Mishnah says, that's how the world was created, with utterances. And so in the way that at least the Hasidic tradition understands what's happening here at Mount Sinai is that level of creative power is what's being unleashed. And in a finite sense, there are distinct categories of instructions that are being given through that divine expression. Don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't be a false witness. But beyond that, Rabbi Key will say, don't forget about the undifferentiated expression that's happening there, besides these finite rules of adultery and false witness. There is this infusion of the power of the divine. And that's what creates the world. And that's what's being infused into us. And that's what we carry within us as a storehouse of power. And that's what this moment at Mount Sinai was all about. It is trying to tune us to be the instruments of that divine power that we carry within us. So, as if to emphasize this awesome responsibility that is happening here at this confounding moment that we call Mount Sinai. the rabbis ask us to read as the Haftarah portion for this week, verses from the prophet Isaiah. And it's part of a vision. And it includes these words for the prophet says, I heard the voice of God saying, whom shall I send? Who will go for us? And the prophet responds, and I say, Hineni, here I am, send me. It was as if the rabbis are pointing at this and saying, that's what that moment at Mount Sinai is all about. Is designed to tune us into being an instrument capable of saying, Hineni, I'm now ready to carry out this awesome power of being bringing life, of being creative, of being a source of liberation, being a source of compassion, and being a source of joy. I'm ready. Send me. With that, I'd love to know how you experience this moment of Sinai that we're constantly encountering. You raise your hand, I'd love to call upon you. Dave Phillips, please.
Two things strike me here. Number one, first of all, the Ten Commandments aren't commandments in Jewish tradition. They are statements, but they are also orders. Do not kill. But what struck me as I read them out loud is we get to covet, and it's completely different. It is not a short 1, 2, 3 statement. It's do not covet blah blah, do not covet blah blah, do not covet blah blah, do not covet blah blah. And the other thing about covet is all the other commandments are about behavior. Don't do this, don't do that, observe the Sabbath. Covet is about emotions. It's like it just doesn't fit with the rest. And of course, all that means that there's no God. I have no idea what it means.
Oh, well, here's the way I received this material, the way I experience it. Because I'm glad you brought that up. And yes, these are behavioral things, and then it ends up with this interior experience of not coveting. And so Rabbi Lawrence Kushner does this very beautiful thing where he says, you shall not covet is not an insistence. It's not as what we would call a commandment. It's not an instruction. It's a promise. If you live in accordance with this way I'm passing on to you, what you will ultimately experience will be contentment. You won't feel the need to want what someone else has. You will feel whole. You will feel fulfilled. You won't feel avarice. You won't feel rapacious. You won't feel the need to take. You won't feel the desire that you won't feel that you're missing something. If you live in this path, you'll feel contentment. You'll feel you have what you need to be happy and free. That's the way I.
So you shall not covet means you're not going to covet.
Yes, it's a promise. It means
you will not covet.
Yeah, you won't feel this way. If you do these things and live this way, you won't feel it. You won't feel this way. Okay. So let me call upon
I wanted to say something.
thank you, Susan. Thank you so much. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm having problems here. But it did occur to me that perhaps that with all of this seeing sounds and hearing sights, that it might have been overwhelming. And that may have been what resulted in the golden calf, was that it was just too much.
Yeah. Can you imagine that? I mean, can you imagine that you're being offered to be raised up to this high level of ethical and moral and spiritual attainment? And can you imagine experiencing that and then retreating back into something that's much more materialistic and
Simple.
self-aggrandizing and seeking to control things, and happens to me on a daily basis for myself. I go up and down all the time. So thank you for pointing that out.
Plus, the golden calf, which was actually a golden young bull, was a very traditional method of worship before science. So it also symbolizes going back to the kind of religion that was much more rooted.
Yeah.
And not nearly as frightening as this thing you can't understand. You don't know which way is up or north or south or east or west. And that's why the Haredi call themselves the vibrating people.
So a lot of hands are going up. Thank you both so much. I've got Catherine and Richard here, and Norm and Mark and Jay and Bill. How rich is that? Okay, go ahead, Catherine.
Okay. I was thinking about the phase that the Israelites are in. And it seems to me that there is this idea of learning to communicate with Adonai, learning to communicate with him. We had the cloud and the fire, before they leave Egypt, but it seems that they're still searching for a way to communicate. Of course, they have Moses, but it seems really important for them to experience Adonai at this juncture. And so it really made sense to me that it would be something at once strange because the senses are getting confused for them. So it's not ordinary, the way they ordinarily receive sensory signals, but at the same time that it's unmistakable. There's sort of like a paradox there, but that is why I like the translation as vibration, because it's something that goes beyond verbal communication and also gets them to experience some kind of oneness as a community, right? I mean, they're all vibrating a reaction to the same thing. What brought that to mind, actually, this is just a little anecdote. My first trip to Brazil, I was 21, and I was taken to the carnival celebration. And it was still in the street. It was not in a stadium or anything. It was in the street on bleachers. And when the bands came out drumming in unison, hundreds of people, you could do nothing but vibrate, with everybody else. And it was really a very powerful experience. And I've never returned to Brazil during Carnival since then because I didn't want to erase that memory. But anyway, that's what this got me to thinking, is that all of a sudden they're sort of vibrating together. But then going to the painting, that got me paint. Obviously, I think the painting is very evocative of this mixture of senses and this confusion. But lurking within it is also the possibility of some kind of chaos that will happen to them if they do not heed the message. So,
So I'm looking at first of all, very rich what you said. I'm glad you brought it about Carnival. It's like that's very exciting. And you got me to look back at what Kandinsky said about the cosmos came into existence as a catastrophe, which becomes a symphony.
huh.
Yeah. And in a sense, when we think about Kabbalah, we think about this breaking of things, but it's that breaking of things which holds out the potential for this beautiful, harmonious world to be created. And I think about when we go to the symphony, there's that moment before they actually start to play when everyone tunes up and it sounds somewhat cacophonous, right? It sounds a little bit chaotic. You know, all these instruments are like trying to get tuned up. And I said, oh my gosh, this is awful. It sounds awful. And then as soon as they start to play together, out of that cacophony comes that beautiful music. We can talk Richard and then Norm and Bill and Jay and Mark and Norm. Oh, how excited. Okay, go ahead, Bill. Richard himself, I think.
I just thought, going to add on to what you were saying about, cut it. Since, every other 9 are going to do these things because they will hurt somebody. But coveting is making not the, you can't say the name. You hook yourself into covering. I think that's the most important. But come in before things are good. What's going on inside?
Oh, wow. Okay, I never thought of it that way. All these instructions.
Rabbi, I'm not sure we could hear Richard.
Okay.
Would you mind repeating what he said? Yeah.
Could not hear anything.
Okay, so what Richard was saying is that what precedes the final instruction or guidance about not coveting has to do with how you treat the external world around you. And the last one, this one about coveting is, and if you treat the external world around you with the appropriateness it deserves, then you're not giving up anything. You're not restricting yourself in a negative way. You end up expanding yourself so much that you experience that you have everything that you need. So this attending to the outside world and treating the outside world with compassion and respect and justice and so forth ends up with an internal expansion of yourself. And perhaps it comes as a surprise.
I was thinking that if you are coveting, you're hurting yourself. And you can't be remaining. You're not there to be in part of a community that's trying to make a happy, non-kind government that takes you away from being present. And I think it's the most sensible commandment. It's like not being mindful.
Beautiful. Thank you, Richard. That's beautiful. And let me call upon Norm and then Bill and then get to Jay.
Rabbi, could you please read the first line of Rabbi Akiba's statement? I couldn't find it in the notes.
Well, it's not in the notes, but
Okay, then let me go on. It's if we don't have it. First of all, I share your. Am I getting feedback here?
I can hear you.
Okay. I share your angst with many of the things that are presented here. I wouldn't call it troubling for me, rather intriguing. First of all, both Rabbi uh, uh, sorry, I'm blocking on the first rabbi's name.
Rabbi Ishmael and
Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiba are both describing what other people are experiencing. And I think it takes a lot of chutzpah to do that, to tell what somebody else is experiencing. And I think they're missing an important point here, that people experience things differently. Sometimes the thunder may be felt, sometimes it may be heard, sometimes it may be seen. It depends on the person. If you really want to know what somebody is experiencing, then you should talk to them. I think this brings on a theme of inclusiveness. The fact that Moses is listening to his father, who's a non-Israelite, and taking major recommendation from him. This is about inclusiveness. People have a lot to offer, not only your blood relative, but somebody else. You talked about synesthesia. It's fascinating. This is where one sense is perceived as another sense. I think we have an introduction to this in the opening verses of Genesis, where we say God spoke, he said, let there be light. And here is the nexus between sound and light. We see it again in the ninth plague, where there's a darkness which is so dark that it can be felt. So this isn't the first time that we've gone between different different senses. Again, I think there's major, to me, what's resonating to me is major messages of inclusiveness.
Nice. I like that very much. Thanks for pointing that out. Thank you. You want to call upon Bill?
When David and you were talking about the notions of covet, there seemed to be almost a parallel between we're talking about acts in the world, and then things that are kind of in that internal process. And I love how you framed it as well. But it's one of my favorite parts of this portion, and it's in the translation of the Adonai Malach prayer in the Mishkan that we use, is dense clouds are around Adonai, that there's this this mystery and this lack of full precipitation, but there's possibility. And it was a reminder to me that it's like it's in that world, in our minds and in our before things come into action, that there's this opportunity to kind of create and manifest, and in addition to a promise, it brings like a full circle obligation, that like the rain, the precipitation. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Nice, Bill. I just want to extend that notion about how important the sense of mystery is, and to contrast that with this notion about no graven image. So when you create a graven image, there's no mystery there. It's pretty clear what it is. And that's going to go, also maybe that has to do with this notion about the golden calf. We don't want the cloud. We want something we can see and touch and can know that's recognizable. We don't want to deal with that which eludes us, which eludes our sense of being able to contain it and confine it and control it ultimately. Yeah. So the notion of mystery is such an important part, I think, of any spiritual life, but certainly an important part of this path that's being laid out and being walked by us. Let me call upon Jay. Go ahead, Jay.
Can you hear me, Rabbi?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to work backwards from Kadinsky. Google Experience
lets you hear the colors and shapes. I just Googled it. I don't know the link for it, but it was from 2021. So anyone that might be interested. The other thing is that I looked at composition 7, VII. I don't know if there was a continuum from one, but there's also in images, there's a composition 8 with just the regular number 8 instead of, but composition means what things are made up of. And what I notice is that you couldn't really get better than this Kandinsky painting, because what he's doing is he's hearing and seeing a symphony which he's creating in this canvas. He's basically, this is Mozart, Beethoven, Aaron Copland. This is somebody saying this is the composition of what the universe is, or this is the composition of what uh, is being created. And uh, some of his paintings have very, very strong symmetry, straight ruled lines and angles, triangles. This one has very little of that. The other thing that really, really came to mind is that, yeah, poor Moses is in this situation, and Yitro gives him this thing. The next thing we're going to read are all these very strict and harsh rules. I mean, it's just rule after rule next week. So the people have to be conditioned to know that they're a part of this ongoing creation. In order to do it, the instruments have to be um, uh, in tune. So I looked up, and that someone had mentioned this, and that is that I believe that Hashem, or the Yud Hey Vav Hey, is the A note from the oboe in which all the orchestra tunes. Okay, it's the A note. It's not the B note or the Z note. It's the A note. And someone gets up there with this vibrating string, which is the violinist. It's not the oboist. He starts, and then the oboe. So what's happening is, I think that when you hear about Kandinsky hearing and seeing the sounds, this really brings to mind what the authors of this text, drawing from godly sources, are trying to say to us. I just, uh, and I must say that there have been times when I have been basically half asleep. I won't go into too much, but when I've heard a loud noise and see a flash of light. I have done that. That's happened several times in my life. Upon a loud noise, when my eyes are closed, I see a flash of light. That's all I can say. Beyond that,
Treasure.
it's beyond. It's beyond.
Thank you, Jay. Treasure the moment. Thank you. And let me call upon Mark Thompson.
Thank you. I think a lot of us are expressing here tonight our own personal feelings and expressions of what was experienced on Sinai. Catherine was talking about her experience listening to this cacophonous band, and Dave up there has a photograph of Jupiter, and I'm thinking that Kepler, invented this idea of the planets moving in a certain way, called it the music of the spheres, and then Holst created the planets. He heard sounds when he saw the planets. And then I have to just say, from a personal experience, last September, Betsy and I had an opportunity to see the Northern Lights in Canada. And they were amazing. I mean, reds and greens and blues, and just filling the sky and moving all over. And it really was a visual, I don't know how to explain it, except I can even say something better than that. Last night, Robert and I had an opportunity to participate in a writers group. And one of the participants, who at one time lived in Yellowknife, which is not far from where we had seen the Northern Lights, mentioned that he would always see the Northern Lights. And not only did he see all the colors, but they would crackle. Well, to me, that's really God in nature. this is what we can experience right now. It's not as if we have to look back and read a Torah portion to get a sense of what we can actually listen to and experience right now.
Lovely. I'm going to share that back in just a moment. Let me call upon Dave, since you're up there in Jupiter.
That's pretty much what Mark said when I saw all those colors in the painting that you posted. It made me think of the some cosmic artwork, some of the cosmic artwork we see. So I happen to have this picture of Jupiter, so I thought I'd share it.
Yeah, I'm glad that you shared that, and it did its job of inspiring Mark to expound further upon it. And let me draw some themes together here. So Kandinsky was also influenced and had a wonderful mutual with composers of atonal music, and that atonal music, was a defiance of pre-existing structure. And Schoenberg's atonal music was designed, in a sense, to release into the air the understanding that there are more things happening than can happen within the confined structure of pre-existing music forms, that there's a multi-vocality that's available. And of course, this is what's happening at this point in history in the art world, the end of the 19th century, beginning of the 20th century, this rejection of the confining forms that have existed in Western art world for 100 and hundreds of years, which was always in pursuit of perfection, in pursuit of absolute final truth, of a single truth, and so forth. And all these artists are now unleashing their subjectivity and unleashing the awareness that there are, as you all pointed out, and Norm highlighted, there are more ways to understand a given phenomenon than one way. And I think that's the meaning of the Mechilta Midrash introducing us to Rabbi Ishmael and Rabbi Akiva, and not insisting that one was right and one was wrong. That there are multiple ways to experience the phenomena of the world around us, and they each contribute something to our becoming a bigger, more expanded human being. And I think that is what's happening in this week's Torah portion. This notion of the confounding of senses is not meant to be confusing in the sense that everything is equally important or something. What it's meant to do, it's a confusion of senses that is designed to lead us to a greater perspective. And that's what Kandinsky is doing here in his painting. He's saying, we're going to burst the bounds of the forms. We're going to burst the bounds of what has been until now only objects of representation. And in a sense, that's it's a regression, as you all pointed out. The golden calf will be a regression back to that desire. No, that's too scary. I want to hold on to only that which can be represented and seen and touched. And I don't want to end into the mystery. But this whole body of literature is about, it's going into the mystery, which in our narrative is the wilderness. It's going into that mystery, which is what's going to ultimately free us to be the sovereign, compassionate, loving human beings that we have the capacity to be. And I'm so grateful to enter into these mysteries again and again and again with all of you. I'm so grateful you enrich my life I look forward to our next gathering. Be well, everyone. God bless you all. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you.
Good night.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
God bless you all.